Do you like balls? Well, I hope you do, because in today's video, we're going to be going over how to create 10,000 of them, shoot them down a corridor, have them react with a bunch of objects like tables, vases, and whatever else you want. And then finally, for the cherry on top, we're going to go into the scene gravity settings and mess around with gravity to have some really cool results. So, without further ado, let's jump in. File, we're going to delete everything other than the cube, and we're going to make a corridor out of this. So, play around with the length, the width, however much you like. The next thing we're going to have to do is add in a door. I'm going to do this by using loop cuts, and once we pick a face, we're just going to extrude it, and this is where the balls are going to enter through. Like I said, you can play around with the length, and the next thing we're going to need to do is add in the tables. The way I'm going to do the tables, you can import one or you can do it how I'm going to do it. So I added a Bezier curve, a plane, and then I deleted the vertices off the Bezier curve, click the draw function, switch the surface, and then just try to model out a rough sketch of the leg. And it kind of looks like that. And then you're just going to play around and just delete whatever doesn't see fit. Rotate it, scale it, go through all of them, and try to make it as round as possible. So now we're going to give our curve a little bit of depth, and this will give us an even better understanding of how the leg is going to look. And when we're done, we're going to just bump up the resolution preview divisions to about 16, a little bit more. This will make it a little bit smoother on the curve side. And we're going to switch our pivot point to the 3D cursor, and we're going to go to top orthographic view and rotate by 90 degrees. We're going to duplicate, rotate by 90 degrees. The next thing is we're going to add in the top of the table. We're going to add in a circle. I gave it 64 vertices in the beginning, and we're going to give it a solidify, apply the thickness, and that looks pretty good. We're going to shade it smooth so it looks all nice and everything. So that's our table. That's going to be one of our assets we're going to throw in. But before we do that, I'm going to combine all of them together. So the way we do that is we select the curves. Make sure you have one selected as a primary, so that yellow one, and we're going to go to Object, Convert, Mesh to Text. You can also press F3 and do it that way. And we're going to do Control J on all those meshes, and it'll combine them all together. And you can see we have a bunch of vertices and things like that. The next thing is we're going to add in a vase. So I added in a circle, and I'm giving it a subsurf modifier because we're just going to fill it, and then we're going to just extrude up, and we're going to scale it out, and we're just going to play around. Same thing. Make sure you switch your pivot point back to the median point. That's period, and then you want to switch it to whatever one you're doing. To median point. So we had it on 3D cursor before, now we're going back to median point. And now I'm just doing simple extrusions up, insets, things like that to kind of get the shape of a vase. And I like how that shape's looking, and I'm going to tweak it as we go along here. So I like how my vase and my table look, so now we're going to import them and put them back into the scene. I'm going to rename them, and I'm going to move them to a new collection, and now we're going to add in a camera. So this camera, we're going to position it on the opposite end of that door, because that door is going to break open. We're going to see all the balls fly in, and then we want the camera to record all that. I'm going to do a little bit some other adjustments to the scene, to the corridor. Maybe move out the sides, and then now I'm going to play around with this vase and this table, because we want everything to look pretty proportionate. And the best way to do that is just to go into X-ray mode and use your numpad 1, 2, 3 just to kind of figure it out, how big, the size, and then when you find a sizing that you like, just move it down and put it to the left. So we're going to apply modifiers, and now we're going to combine our table and vase together, because we're going to add an array modifier just to throw in more. It's going to be easier to throw in more geometry here of the same thing. So I like to add 4. You can add as many as you want. The more you do, the more work it is to just animate them in the future. So now we're just going to go into the portion of where we're going to make this corridor look fairly real. So these little loop cuts and faces that I'm going to be extruding in and out are going to be doors. Now I'm going to add in a little door frame using this little plane that I added in. And then we're going to move this thing along the... we're going to add this to an array modifier, and we're going to move it around. And same thing as before, we're going to add in 4 of these since there's 4 doors. So now I'm going to add in windows on the opposite side of where I just added all those doors. And you can get as fancy or creative as you want. I went a little bit extra and I added in just extra detail. So once I find something for the windows that I like, I'm going to just go to the door and select those edges on the outside of it and extrude them out. And this is going to be our funnel for the balls to kind of fall through that door and into our scene. I'm giving it a little bit of elevation of angle so they kind of fall and they roll into it. And then I'm also going to just extrude the top layer up. Then I'm going to select the faces up here and I'm going to use these to make a light source. And it's very simple. I'm just going to select them, about 4, however many you want. And I'm going to extrude them up and then give them an emission texture later. So now I'm going to add in our balls. I do that by adding a UV sphere and scaling it down to about a decent size for the project. I'm going to move it over a little bit and I'm going to give it an array modifier. I'm going to give it a factor of the X about 1.1 so that way they're not touching. And I'm going to pump this counter up to about 10. And I'm giving another array modifier, and this time I'm going to change the Y axis to 1.1 as well, but I got to make it negative so it goes the opposite direction. I'm going to give it 10. Then on the X side, I'm going to go back to my front modifier. I can squeeze in a little bit more, so that'll give us a good amount of geometry. Then I'm going to duplicate and hide this other set of balls into a collection. And now I'm going to go P and separate by loose parts in edit mode, and I'm going to give each one its own origin. I'm going to set it to the origin to geometry. So now we're going to select all of our balls. We're going to hit F3 and type in add active. This will give an active to every single one of them. Then once again, we're going to select all the balls and hold down Alt and change the shape from convex hull to sphere, and hold down Alt one more time to change the friction value. When you hold down Alt, it applies it to every single one of those spheres, and we want that friction value down close to around 0. And once we do that, you can see they're all doing. So now we need to go in and we need to separate these tables, each one by one. Now we're going to go F3, add in an active body. You want to do F3 not manually through the physics panel, because then you'll have to go through each one and add it. You can play around with your masses for each one however you want. That's not really that important. That's just mostly personal. But what is really important you have to do is you need to go down to the Dynamics tab, add in deactivation, holding Alt, remember, and start deactivation. This will make sure so that the tables don't just fall over right when you start it. It needs to be pushed by a force to start it. And we need to select all those tables, and we need to set an origin to geometry. That's also very important, or else you're going to have your things pretty messed up. So now you can see they're starting to fall over and they're reacting, and you can see they kind of drop and then they sit there until something hits them, and that's exactly what we want. So now we want to extend our timeline to 900, and now we're going to keyframe the gravity at 250, because now in the scene properties we're going to play around with gravity. And this is going to be all to personal preference. You can have the balls go to the right, left, whatever. So if I play around with the Y value, this will make the balls go left to right. If I play around with the X value, it's going to make the balls go front and center. And if I play around with the Z value, it's going to make the balls go up in the air or down in the air. And you just need to adjust each value accordingly. Make sure you're jumping through your timeline and just adding in a keyframe at each time you want the gravity to change. So you can have all the balls go to the right with 0 gravity, or you can have all the balls go to the right with gravity. It all does some pretty impressive and cool simulation type things. So once you bake the simulation, you can see it does some pretty cool stuff. Like, this is when it's on the X side, it'll come flying at you, but I want it to go to the right. So I'm going to delete the X and I'm going to give it a -5 Y value. So that way it goes to the right. And nothing has been applied yet because we need to delete our bake, delete our cache in that scene properties, rigid world bodies. Here at 675, I want to change the gravity to -5 and on the X and the Z to 1. So that way it'll go forward. And then I hit bake and I look, and then I'm going to render out a viewport animation. So now that we have the simulation pretty much done, The last step is to texture the whole entire thing. So as you can see, it's really dark. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add in a light, an emission source to this top panel here. And I'm going to switch it to light. I already have some, I already imported some materials that I like to use. So that's just an emission source of 1. And now we're going to go in and we're going to add in the floor. So I'm going to select the floor and I'm going to switch the floor, apply, and then you can see how this looks. And we're going to go through each one, like doors. I want to give the doors a brown frame and things like that. And we're going to go through. And now we can add in more balls to our simulation. Make sure you're starting at 0 of your frames. You're going to add in more balls. It just makes things a little faster. I'm going to move one up on the Z-axis, and I'm going to give it the same array modifier as before. So 1.1, move it out by 20, and then I'm going to add another array modifier, move it on the Y by 1.1, and then give it a 10. And then the last one, I'll give it on the Z, 1.1, factor 0, and then we're just going to give it however many we want, 10. You can go crazy. You can add 200, 2,000. For computer's sake, I wouldn't do that, but I'm giving it 50 because I know my computer can take it. And the same rules apply. Apply all modifiers. Separate by loose parts. This will take a second to load in. Once it does, we're going to right click, set origins to geometry. This will take a second for it to work too. And since it already has the rigid body active, that's good enough. The next thing we need to do is we need to just mess around with the door here a little bit. We need to animate it. So there's the door. Give it a rigid body. We're going to give it an active. And we're going to animate this door. The way we're going to do that is we're going to just play through. And we're going to go in the frame right before the balls hit it. And I'm going to keyframe the door here, location, rotation. Then I'm going to go about 3-4 frames forward. Move along the X, move it up, rotate it. I may not move it up because then it'll glitch through the top. I just want it to go forward. And when we're dealing with heavier size files, obviously the little simple commands are you don't want to make too many mistakes. You want to be in your A game. To get back into the file, we're going to just move it and we're going to rotate it. It's along median points, and we want to make sure we set the origin to that door here. And we can see if we set the origin too late, it gives us a problem. So the way we fix this is we just need to go back after we set the origin to geometry, line up the door where it was supposed to be, press I and set a location and rotation keyframe. Then when we go to frame 32, which is the last frame where the door was, we're going to check the animated button. You can see it's in its rightful place, and we'll keyframe that. And to be safe, I would press I and add another location rotation keyframe on that same frame. I didn't do it here, but you don't need to. I'm going to delete this keyframe because that was my previous animated one. And then I'm going to go frame forward and uncheck the animated and press I. And that's a little quick debug right there. And then now you just need to rebake your simulation and it will work like a charm. And now it's time for the final part, which is texturing the balls. And how I change each one. Do I go through manually and change every single one? Of course not. That would be a complete waste of time and it would kind of suck. So the texture, the shader I have set up for it is just an object info, random, plugged into a color ramp. The RGB is set to constant. And you can just play around with whatever colors you want there just by adding the plus. If I want more red, I can do that. I want green, I can do green. I can do light blue, whatever you want. It's up to you. Into a principal BSDF and also a glossy BSDF, and then edge shader, and then a material output, and then we get this really cool coloring. I just want to say thank you if you stuck through the end of the video. I know I went pretty fast there. I recommend just rewinding the parts. I didn't want this video to be like 40 minutes long, so I just double speeded and I just try to zoom through it. It's a pretty simple and fun project once you get the hang of it, and you can do a lot of cool things with it. So if you enjoyed the tutorial, I'd love to ask of you to subscribe, like, and comment what else I should do or any unclear parts I can go over. Or if you saw me do anything that's kind of cringeworthy or not good in Blender, please let me know down in the comment sections. I love reading them. Other than that, I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you for watching.